Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel for a brand new video. Usually I'd be posting a Thursdoid development update right about now, but unfortunately the writer of the Thursdoids isn't feeling too well at the moment. All the best for a quick recovery to them, by the way. Today I thought I'd introduce you to a new way to play Project Zomboid instead, focusing on a couple of mods that we've developed alongside some very talented modders, specifically for this purpose, and using some gameplay from our Patreon server to show you how the players have adapted to the setup. The concept has been titled The Dark Ages. All the mods associated to this setup are linked in the description in the form of a handy mod pack if you want to give this a go for yourself or plug it into your server. And lastly, if you enjoy the video, please do consider dropping the channel a like and subscribing for all things zombie survival. So, first things first, what is the premise behind the Dark Ages setup? Well, the whole idea behind this entire setup was based around an apocalypse that has passed not years, but centuries into the future. For the sake of argument and specifics, let's say anything between 10 and 20 years. In this particular scenario, the world survivors of the present day once knew has long since dissolved. The dead walk the streets in huge numbers, and nature has seeped into every nook and cranny, reclaiming urban areas for its own. Settlements have started to form, with new ones cropping up more and more often as survivors attempt to rebuild society together. Many commodities have become progressively more scarce and withered with the passing of time, leaving it to survivors to make their own remedies for each new shortage. Essentially, we're looking at a formerly modern world that has almost devolved into simple pseudo-medieval times, hence the name of the setup. The initial challenge that we were faced with was making the world itself appear appropriate for the setting. To accomplish the look of a desolate, overgrown Kentucky, there was only one mod that would help us do this, one that I've used before many a time, and I'm sure a lot of other players are familiar with it too, the 10 Years Later mod by Dane. If you've not heard of this one before, essentially it makes the world look much more dated with varying options as to how overgrown you'd like your world to be. This also offered us some great opportunities to increase the relevance of foraging, as you can rip down vegetation from walls and sometimes discover foraging finds as a result. In a world where fresh food is already rotten and tinned goods are rare, this helped out a lot. To complement the immersive feeling of the world, we added the Barricaded World mod as well, which, as the name suggests, barricades some existing buildings at random around the world to help sell the feeling of the apocalypse. Now, personally, I would have liked to have added another mod called 10 Years Later Cars and Wrecks, which we've used previously to make vehicles look all banged up and rusted, but going by some recent comments on the Steam page, it seemed like it was no longer functional. With that in mind, we chose to forego this mod on this particular occasion. This brings me nicely onto our vehicles and how we handle transportation. As we all know, right now animals are planned for build 42, which I'm half expecting to lead into things like horses, for example, that would allow players alternative modes of transport, either from the developers directly or in the form of mods from the modding community. Until then though, there's no real alternative travel methods to cars that I'm aware of that requires a suitable amount of maintenance or a time sink of some kind to actually make it an achievement to acquire them. So cars stayed, but not before I made some tweaks using the mod More Vehicle Options. This allowed me to adjust both how many parts vehicles would spawn with and the general condition of the cars themselves. The idea here is to make getting a vehicle up and running a more difficult task that requires a considerable amount of time and effort, or at the very least some points dumped into mechanics when you first make your character if you want to speedrun it. We're also running the expanded hotwire mod, which allows us to remove the benefit of hotwiring vehicles from the burglar occupation and associate a required level of mechanics and electrical skill in order to be able to hotwire vehicles yourself. You can also make keys for vehicles if you level up metalworking as well, which is a very nice touch. Lastly, we vastly reduced the levels of gas available out in the world. Both vehicles and gas stations spawned with gas, but in very low amounts. So whilst we weren't able to offer a replacement for vehicles, we have suitably tweaked them to be a challenge to get up and running effectively and to keep running. Now, this next part is by far my favorite part of this setup. We wanted to give players some additional crafting and time investment with the Dark Ages theme, so I got looking around the workshop and found Yaki's makeshift clothing mod. This mod already offered a bunch of different clothing options that had the aesthetic of being crafted by survivors of the apocalypse rather than pre-apocalypse clothing. I immediately got in touch with Yaki and got to work on expanding his existing mod in a number of ways. Firstly, we added various armor sets designed, modeled and textured gestured by Yaki, using nothing but a few reference images and my incompetent ramblings of what kind of thing we were after. Each of these sets were built to give differing protection values, weights, installation, and most importantly, they were each crafted in a different way. Next, we needed a way to encourage players to actually use crafted clothing and armor. It's all well and good having them in the game, but players aren't necessarily going to actually make use of them if they can just go and kill some military or police zombies for quick and easy protection. With that in mind, Yaki added another version to his mod that is completely optional, but makes zombies spawn with nothing but tattered rags for clothes. We then paired this with the More Loot Settings mod, which allowed us to remove clothing spawns out in the world. To complement these two mods, we added another, drawn up by here, which makes players spawn in low-tier crafted clothing from Yaki's mod. So, we've got a reason for players to craft and some pretty suave-looking outfits for the avid tailor to make. But how do players actually go about getting the resources required for the crafts themselves? This was the part I was looking forward to getting finished up, because with crafting changes and benches coming in build 42, this was a good chance to see how this aspect of the game might be received. For cloth-based clothing, we added packets of flax seeds to the world that could be grown and harvested, just like any other crop. This would then need to be spun at a loom into fabric, which was a physical workbench style item we had modeled specifically for this use, and then dyed if necessary using various hair dyes or foraging based items. For anything leather specific, animals acquired through trapping or foraging could now grant leather when skinned, and leather strips from tattered leather clothes could also be combined to make larger patches of leather for this purpose. Metal armor sets were made with metal sheets or scrap, and lastly, we added some unusable tires that could be converted into solid rubber for another one of the armor sets. All in all, we had a fully functional system with multiple different ways to get different types of armor for our players that all coalesced at one workbench. One big challenge that we put in front of our players was also a severe lack of firearms and ammunition. Now, I know when I say that, a lot of people are instantly going to get put off by the setup, and that's cool, I get it. Firearms are pretty awesome, but in this setting, it really gives you a hurdle to overcome. You can't just load up on boxes of shotgun shells and drive into the middle of Louisville with you and your few friends. Survival is more difficult, and taking on large areas requires more patience, thought, and manpower. This brings me to the last major implementation from this setup, which are the custom-made settlements developed by one of our very own server admin team, Simon MD. Each of these 4 settlements work as a different spawn location in our setup, and we encourage the players to pick one settlement to base at. Of course, this wasn't forced, they were free to go and make their own safe houses if they wanted to, but we were really surprised by the uptake on these communities we offered to our patrons. Lots of people decided to make one of these settlements their home, and they began rebuilding the settlements and gathering gear for each other within hours. All of the settlements built by Simon were specifically designed to require a lot of work and have their own unique challenges. Spencer Mansion, for example, spawns with a bunch of car wrecks piled up just in front of the entrance, preventing access for vehicles until players can dismantle the wrecks and clear the bridge. Knox Heights is a half-built apartment building which gives players the opportunity to turn the rooms into something of their own design, and you get the idea from there. When I revisited the settlements for recording this video just over 10 days after the server launched, man oh man have these guys made some progress, and it's been amazing watching everyone working together for community projects. I'd encourage any server with a good community to give this sort of thing a try. Just make sure to give your players plenty of combination locks so they can protect their own stuff within the settlement. So that's just about it in terms of the mods we had commissioned and added for this setup. We've had a few modded maps in play, but found that for some reason Blueberry doesn't seem to be respawning loot as intended. All the other maps seem to be working just fine, but really it's your personal choice which ones you want to add to use in your own setups. I'd like to invite you guys to share some other mod suggestions for this kind of setup if we were to do this again in the future. I'm always looking to find new mods to try and test, so let me know in the comments. As I mentioned earlier in this video, there will be a link in the description to the mod pack, and if you want to give this setup a try on our server, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description too. Special thank you to all of my existing patrons who support the channel, our mod commissions, and have already joined us on the whitelisted server. I'm very thankful to have all of you guys as part of my community. Thanks folks, and I'll see you all in the next one.